Wait until you see the brand new collaboration between Catherine Pooler Designs and Sizzix. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and this video is part of the Vacay Mode YouTube Hop, the collaboration between Catherine Pooler Designs and Sizzix to feature stamps, dies, stencils, embossing folders, and 2 new tools from Sizzix. But for now, let's take a look at the collection that I'll be working with. First, let's take a look at the stamp sets that I'll be working with today. This one is called Going Bananas, and it features the cutest little monkeys, and there are a couple little accessories that can be used with them, as well as a few sentiments. This is the Stay Wild stamp set. There are some fun jungle sentiments, as well as jungle images like leaves, coconuts, things like that. These would work really well with the Going Bananas set as well. Here are the framelits for both. So you can see that there are outline dies to cut out the images of the stamps, and then there are solid dies to create a die cut monkey and some die cut leaves. So here's the same thing. There are outline dies to cut out some of the leaves that you can stamp, and then there are solid dies to cut out leaves to layer up some flowers and things like that. Here's the 3D Textured Impressions embossing folder. It's called Jungle Textures, and it creates a really fun background. This is the layering stencil set. It's a jungle out there, and there are 4 different layers. You can see that there are little holes at the top of the stencil. I'll show you exactly how to use those with the Stamp and Stencil tool. Now let's unbox those new Sizzix tools and see how well they work with these new supplies. First, let's take a look at the Stencil and Stamp tool. So you can see that this is a way to use layered stencils with a guide, with a tool that's going to make it completely easy. This is a sticky grid sheet, and you can buy extra sticky grid sheets in a pack. So the sticky grid sheet has a release paper on the front and the back. You're going to want to peel off both of those, and they're very easy to peel off. It's not very hard to get the corner going. And then you're going to place it right inside the Stencil and Stamp tool, right on that base there, with the grid side facing up towards you. Now let's take a look at the cover of the tool. It flips open and back down, and if you put it at a 90-degree angle with the base, it comes right out. So this actually is the stencil adapter. See those little rectangles? You'll figure out which one you need depending on the size of the stencils, and you'll place it down on those pieces at the top. Then the stencil has holes at the top that fit right onto the little pegs, and your paper goes underneath. Your paper is going to stick to that grid mat. I'm using Catherine Pooler inks and Catherine Pooler blending brushes. I have my brush and tool holder on the left-hand side to hold all those brushes in place so they don't roll around on my desk. So I'm starting with some melon ice for the first stencil. That is a lot of leaves, so I thought this would be a really pretty fresh color to use for this leafy background. And then once you're done with that first stencil, you simply peel it off, keep the paper in place, and then place the second stencil down on the pegs, and it will line up perfectly on your paper because you kept your paper in place. Now I'm doing some flowers. So I have the It's a Girl from Catherine Pooler, and I'm using another of those small blending brushes so I can get exactly as much ink as I want and exactly where I want it. I don't need to cover the entire stencil. I just want to cover those flowers with It's a Girl. When it's done, I'll peel that off, and then I'll lay the third stencil down. Again, attach it to the pegs at the top where there are holes in the stencil, and then place it down. It will stay stuck on the sides because my card paper is just a little bit smaller, so there's plenty of room for the stencil to stay stuck down like that. And now I have a little bit more green, so I'm using Garden Party and some other colors for the flowers as well. Then peel that up, and you can see this last stencil has a few more leaves and then some of the flower centers. So I'm going to go darkest here for the pink. I'm going to use Be Mine, which really shows up nicely in the center of those pink flowers. For the leaves, I'm going to Lime Ricky for a slightly darker color now, since there are only a few of those leaves. And for the orange flowers, I'm using Catching Rays on the center. And once that's done, peel that up and look at how easy that was to create this layered stencil effect with this tool that just keeps everything in place and perfectly lines it up on your cardstock. So I'll peel that off. If it's a little curled, just curl it in the other direction and it will flatten out perfectly. Once you're done here, you're going to put the release paper back on that sticky grid so that it will protect it. You can take the whole thing off and put the other release paper on. I'm going to be using mine again, so I just put the top one on. Now let's use it as a stamp tool. I put some cardstock down on the sticky grid, and now I have some stamps on the cardstock. I'll place that door or the hinge or the cover back on by placing it at a 90-degree angle and then closing it up. When I close it up, I'll stick the stamps to it and then open it up. Now, normally I would have this open at an angle against the wall behind where you can normally see, but I want you to be able to see that I'm inking it. So for this one, I am going to switch everything to the side so you can see me inking up the stamps. I'm using Catherine Pooler's Midnight Ink because I'm going to do a little bit of alcohol marker coloring. So once they're inked up, I'll close that door and press down on the stamps, and when I open it, I've gotten a perfect image of those monkeys. Here I had a couple of stamps that I felt like they needed a little bit of conditioning on both sides, so I put a little Versamark on them and they were totally fine. If you ever have issues like that, if you feel like the stamp is maybe not sticking as much as you want it to, definitely grab some Versamark. It will take care of it in a jiffy. So now I have those leaves that you can stamp out and then die cut. I've stamped a bunch of those in some green ink so that I have a whole bunch to play with when we start making cards later in the video. And again, just close that door and open it back up, and now you have it all stamped out. Now let's unbox and check out the Stamp and Spin tool. This is made to go with the Stencil and Stamp tool. So I'll open it up. You get that instruction manual, but I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. It's very simple once you do it once. So we'll open up the door here and actually take it off at that 90-degree angle and put the Stamp and Spin tool on same way. This is kind of a little guide at the bottom that will keep that bottom of the grid from getting inky. Here I have a square piece of cardstock. I've placed it in the middle of that grid paper, and I've placed a stamp right at the top in the center of the square. So now I'll ink that up. This is what I meant when I said it's kind of just laying at the back wall where you can't see. It's just easier for me to do it that way, and I didn't want to rotate it every single time to show you that I was inking it. Once you've stamped, then you can spin the little wheel there and decide how many times you want to turn it. It'll kind of click into place, and if you turn it once, it'll be right next to the stamp. If you turn it twice, it'll be further apart. It'll just depend on the stamp that you're using and how far apart. I wanted 4 here, so you could see how I did that. Now we're going to use a coconut stamp, which is actually a layering stamp, and this is where it gets really fun. So the first one I stamped here was just the outline, and I used gingerbread ink. Then I rotated it a couple of times, and now I'll place down on the coconut the second layer, which colors in the skin of the coconut. And for that, I'm going to use ginger. So gingerbread for the outline. So I've stamped up the outline stamp, which has been rotated around. And now I'll grab ginger and I'll stamp up the filled in skin of the coconut. And now I'll place the door back down. And now I've got two in one. So the next thing I'll do is rotate again. So I'm grabbing the wheel once, twice, three times, and now I can place on that first image the meat inside the coconut. So now I have three stamps on the wheel and they're all taking care of a different image. So I'll use buttercream on the fruit that's inside the coconut, then I'll use ginger to color in the skin, and then I'll use gingerbread for the outline. And I'll stamp those all at the same time. How easy is that? So I'm able to create a circular design with layering stamps much easier than I ever thought I could do before. So here we go. I'm showing you exactly how I'm stamping up those three different stamps with three different colors of ink and then placing it down, and it does its job on each of the spaces because we kept the cardstock in place and used the same amount of turns of the wheel. It's very easy to turn the wheel, but it does click into place very easily as well, so that this is not tough to do at all. So now I have all my coconuts done. I'd want to add a few more images around the outside to really complete this. It's almost like a wreath of jungle images. So I have a flower that I'm adding. If you don't get a full stamp for some reason, you didn't ink it up completely, you can do it again. So just open the door, ink it back up, and then stamp it again. Here I have a little banana and I've stamped it next to the flower there. I'll rotate the wheel a couple of times and stamp it again. And this is going to fill in this image really nicely to create a really fun background. And the center will be clean, so you could either put an image there or you could put a sentiment there. This is just a really fun and easy way to create a circular stamped design. Now that you've seen the collection and we've unboxed the Sizzix tools, let's use some of these items. So first up, I have the embossing folder, and I've embossed white cardstock. It looks beautiful just as is, but I really wanted some of those leaves to stand out even a little bit more. So I'm using a very light hand to add a small thin layer of Garden Party on top. It really just helps some of those embossed images pop off the background there. Here are the dies. So as I mentioned, there are outline dies. I've colored in those little monkeys and some leaves and a banana and cut them all out. Now for the solid dies, this is how you create the monkey. There is a head, there's a face, some ears, and they all just get glued down on top of each other. For the flowers, I've decided to use a flower center on one and the larger sort of star on the other flower. You can layer to your heart's content, do a whole bunch of them, but I just wanted to show you that you can layer them on top of each other and make some really pretty flowers. For the monkey, back to the monkey, we're going to put that head right on the body. You get a whole die for the body as well, and then there are little dies for the hands and the feet so that you can have contrasting colors. There's also a die for the belly and it does those little cuts in the center to make it look like fur. So this is a cute little monkey, comes together very quickly and easily. It's not hard at all to put together, and look at how adorable that is. Now there are impressions on the face that you can use a marker to color in. So some eyes, eyebrows, a nose, and a mouth. And I realized when I did that left-hand eyebrow, I made him look a little mad or something. So you'll see later, I'm going to redo the face and put it right on top. Here are the leaves that I stamped and then die cut out. So that's the dies, and they are so much fun to play with in this collection. Now let's use everything to make a few cards. Let's start with the stenciled background. Let's cut it down to 4 by 5 1/4 and then take an A2 piece of white cardstock and use It's a Girl just to swipe an outline around the cardstock. I don't need to color in the whole thing because this is just going to be a matte. So, oh, look at that. I flipped the ink pad around because apparently I was only using one side of the ink pad. So be sure to flip your ink pads around if you like to swipe only on one side. I put a little bit of some tape runner on the back of that stencil and then adhered it down to that background. Now I'm placing it into the stencil and stamp tool. I have the sentiment that says, "Thanks a bunch," and I'll line it up at the bottom of that stencil where there's mostly light green leaves, a little bit over the pink flower as well, and then use some midnight ink to stamp the sentiment. It actually stood out perfectly on that background, so I was very happy with the result there. I have one of the little monkeys and I've wrapped the tail around the little vine that I die cut out. I have 3 small foam squares behind the monkey and then a little bit of liquid adhesive behind the vine. Then place the vine up against the left-hand side of the card and it looks like the little monkey is swinging from that vine. Absolutely love. And then I'll add a little banana since it says "Thanks a bunch." There is also a whole bunch of bananas in that stamp set, but I like this little one. It just looks so cute with the monkey. For this card, remember I said that the eyebrow looked a little off, so I made a new one and I just placed it right on top of the old one. Here I have Do-Si-Do ink and I've cut down my little wreath that was 5.5 by 5.5. I cut it down so that I could mat it on some of this little cardstock that has Do-Si-Do around it. This way it'll have a mat as well. I really like that. And then I can place that on the embossed and inked background, and you can see that the colors all really go well together. I have that die cut monkey, so I popped him up, and then I'm using one of the sentiments from the Stay Wild stamp set, and this one says "Live Untamed," so I'm stamping it in some green ink on a strip of white cardstock, and I decided I really wanted it to be very vibrant and dark green. So I'm gonna double stamp it this time. And I really love that little sentiment. It's so much fun. So once I have that, I did decide to trim it down further so that it wasn't so thick, and then placed a couple of foam squares behind it. And then I'll pop that up at the top of the sort of circular design that we created. For this next card, I embossed another piece of green cardstock in a lighter color, cut it down to 4 by 5.25 and matted it on some darker green cardstock. I have the other monkey that I colored and cut, and I have the tail kind of looks like it's wrapped around a vine in the embossed background. And now each of these this monkey's hands is going to be full of flowers and leaves. So I'll just keep adding them in, some of them flat to the card, some of them popped up. So there's lots of dimension and layers here. And it just looks like the monkey is bringing you just a bouquet of absolutely gorgeous flowers and leaves. And then an extra leaf will go into the curl of the tail. Now I have that "Thanks a bunch" sentiment once again. I'm using the same dark green cardstock that I used as the background. I'll use a little bit of anti-static powder. Don't get it on the sticky grid mat if you can avoid it because it will make it unsticky. And then stamped it with Versamark ink and then poured white embossing powder on top and heat set that so that it's really popping off that green. I absolutely love it. Cut it down to a sentiment strip and then place this time a little bit of tape runner behind it because I felt like I wanted the dimension to be in the monkey and the flowers, and so the sentiment can be flat to the card. So I'll just place that with one of the leaves kind of touching in the corner there, and that's all you need for this fun card. This collection makes it really easy to create fun cards. Don't forget that this video is part of a YouTube Hop, the Vacay Mode YouTube Hop, collaborating between Catherine Pooler Designs and Sizzix. They have great prizes up for grabs, so be sure to check out all the details in the YouTube description box below this video. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Supplies work with them? With them. That's easy. All these new supplies between, oh my, not between.